Inside your bedroom, we stopped counting the days, lost in the rhythm.
Woo! Oh my goodness. Everybody ignore the giant pimple that's on my face. Yikes! Hi, hello. My name is Amy Prokopis. I am an indie author of 9 books now. I write romantasy, and a doggy just walked into the room. Hi, Jan. Oh, there she goes again. Never mind. I think she's gonna leave us. Maybe. We'll see. But that is me. I just published on Monday my 9th book, which is the first book in a brand new series. It is called Trial of Flame and Wings. Here it is. I have it right here with me. It is beautiful. You can find out more about this book by clicking the link below. It'll take you to my link tree and you can find all of my books there. They are all available in Kindle, Kindle Unlimited, and in paperback, available everywhere. So that is me. This book, like I said, brand new series. It is an arranged marriage, has dragons. It'll be a longer series, I think, and it is awesome. So if you like badass female main characters, this book definitely has one of those, inspired a little bit by Disney's Brave. This is very much starts out as like a Merida plot. She is a princess and women are not super respected in this world. And so there's this trial for marriage, which is a fight to the death. All these lords enter in hopes of being the last man standing to win the hand of a princess. And also basically like get close to the king and, schmooze their way into his inner circle. So that's how this starts. She is not having it. She is going to win her own freedom by entering into the trial of marriage. And along the way, there's some allies that are made, some romance that blossoms, and a lot of things that complicate the plot, including a growing rebellion that she has hopes to be a part of, because also by winning her own hand, she wins her freedom from underneath her father in the kingdom, and she's going to try to usurp the throne so that she can free her own people as well as another realm from the tyranny that her family has put them all through. So that's, in a nutshell, Trial of Flame and Wings. This is my 9th book, so I've written a bunch of other things. I've written some YA. My very first book was science fiction, but primarily I write romantasy or fantasy with romance as some kind of a plot point, like a lower plot point. I've written spicy books. I've written books where the romance is the main part and the fantasy is the B plot and vice versa. So I've written a lot of things. Actually, this morning, I just finished drafting book 2 in my Spicy Vampire series that comes out in October. That is the Curse of Wings series, book 2, which I finished writing this morning, is Curse of Blood and Sight. I am so excited that I finished writing that book. So I also have a finished trilogy, which is a young adult series. So I've written quite a few things. I've finished some series. I'm in the middle of some series. I'm getting ready to finish part of a series, of an interconnected standalone series. That's a whole thing. So yeah, we're going to talk about it. That's a little bit about me and some of my background. I asked the internet, mostly Instagram, if people had questions just about like publishing things, myself, my books, my journey, all kinds of things. I got quite a few questions. However, I do plan to do Q&As in the future as well. So some of these I have saved, just like the general ones, to throw into some other videos. And I tried to pick some of the bigger questions. And I know that's a subjective thing to say. They're a mixture of the questions that were really interesting to me and the ones that were really important right now. So meaning if I got asked, like answering them a few months from now would not make sense anymore, or the answer to that question will come out in another month or two. So I picked those questions narrowed it down to a list of 9 to celebrate the 9th book that I've released. So here we go. Q&A, author Q&A. 9 questions that you guys asked me. The first question I got came from, I'm assuming, some of the OG Amy Prokopis followers, some of you who've been around for a really long time in my journey. And I was asked, will you ever go back to writing young adult? When I very first started writing, and especially when I started publishing, holy moly, when I first started publishing and I started to plan out my career, I did sort of like this 5-year plan. Here are all the books that I see myself writing because I like to write in series. And when you write in a series, especially when you write a series that are at least 3 books, you end up planning out for like 3 years-ish if you write a book a year. I don't write a book a year, I write 3 books a year. And so it means that I can alternate my series. That's what I tend to do, is write by season. So I'll write one series in the fall, which means every fall then the subsequent books will come out, and I'll write a different book in the spring. So in the subsequent springs, a different series will be coming out. So I alternate. But that's not even the question that you asked. Let's get back to that real fast. Will I ever go back to writing YA? When I first started publishing, I only planned to write young adult books. That is what I had always planned to write. The way that I was functioning was that I was writing young adult books, but I was reading more like new adult, grown-up books. And I loved that space. There were things I really liked about the new adult space. For one, the characters were more grown up. The subject matter was more grown up. I always wanted to sort of write some more grown up, in basically more intimate moments. I wanted to write sex more into my books, which is not something you really do in young adult books. There is sex in my young adult books, but they're young adult books. And so they're very much off the page. The discussion of it that does happen in the books is extremely tame and very age appropriate, things that like teenagers would be talking about appropriately. So there's a difference big time in that space. And that is something that has been discussed quite a lot on like the internet and in places like Threads about whether spice should exist in young adult spaces. And first and foremost, I don't consider sex spice. That is not the same to me. Maybe that is something that we should discuss for another time. Actually, put a pin in it because there's a similar question. We'll come back to that. Good Lord, I'm having the hardest time. This is question number 1. Long story short, the further I got into publishing and growing as my own person, the less and less these young adult stories resonated with me. And it wasn't just because I was growing up. And so I no longer have some of these experiences anymore daily. I just found myself wanting to write for adults. And that's pretty much where I am. So I'm not saying that I won't ever come back to writing YA, because there is something so raw and like honest about showcasing somebody's coming of age story. I love that about YA especially. That's how I kind of tiptoed my way into writing new adult. I love writing sort of that college age. You're first finding yourself out in the world, figuring out how to interact as an adult with this world you've never had to interact with before. I love those kinds of stories. And so I think new adult especially will always be near and dear to me, and definitely a genre that I will be writing in pretty consistently. But as far as young adult goes, I don't know that I will really come back to it. And especially with some of the books that I am planning to put out in just this calendar year, I almost wonder if it would even be, I don't know, if at least under the Amy Prokopis name, if it would even make sense for me to write in both of those age groups. So I don't really think I will come back, at least not in the next 5 years that I've planned, to young adults. And if I do, I may consider doing that under a pen name just to fully separate, because I am getting into some steamier topics. So no, I'm not planning on coming back to YA anytime soon. Woo! Let's try and speed things up a little. Question number 2, will my books be in audio? I hope so. That's the answer. I know it's a wishy-washy answer. I've thought long and hard about it. I've taken a look at ACX, which is Amazon's company. So there's KDP, which is where everyone is self-publishing their books in like print form or text form. And then there's ACX, which is their audiobook company, where some people are going on and doing audiobooks. And I never, ever, ever, ever want to use any kind of AI. And so all the AI stuff, especially that ACX has, is completely off the table. I want to go and use real people, real narrators. And when it comes to that kind of a format, audio especially is very, very expensive. So with ACX, I could do like a royalty share, which is what a lot, and I would probably say most indie authors do, which is where you pay a certain amount of production costs and the narrator that you choose gets a cut of your royalties over time that the book's out there. And so it also pays off in the end for them too, for royalties. So there's that option, which is also still quite expensive. And then there are other avenues, which I have started to explore more, which is essentially selling my audio rights to some of these other platforms and companies, and they produce the audiobook and I get royalties. So I have looked at some of those other companies. A popular one I've seen a lot is Podium. So if you wanted to go and look more into it to get a better idea of what I'm talking about, Podium would be a good one to go explore. But as of right now, I am not attached to any kind of audio deals. I would just really like to have my books in audio eventually. And so it is something on the table that I have come back to and I've looked into as I have time, but it is not something that I am actively pursuing, at least for this year. So hopefully in the future, my books will be in audio. Another question I got was, do you plan to write about any other side characters from your books? Similar to like Angel, I think is what they're meaning. Meaning, am I planning to take any of the side characters in my stories and give them their own books? So this has kind of become like a trademark thing for me. Not a trademark thing, but it's become something I do fairly often. My Winter Witches series is an interconnected standalone. That is one of my series where the romance is the main plot and the fantasy is the B plot. They're very light, very fluffy, and it's part of a larger series called Season of Witches. And I plan to have interconnected standalones that take place in each series, or each season, I mean. Right now, we've been working through the winter season. There are 3 books. They follow 3 sisters, and each book follows a different sister. So that is my Winter Witches arc, or the winter arc of this series. So I do this a lot, where I take characters and I end up making their own books, and it's not intentional. It's honestly just that I write a book and I have a psychology background and an English background, and so character development is one of my favorite parts of writing. And so I cannot help myself but dive super, super deep into the characters in my stories. And that often means I get very attached to characters that are not the main characters, which is what happened in the Guardians of the Sixth Gate series with book 2. So that is a young adult trilogy. It is completed. And in book 2, there's a character named Angel Martinez. And he is in the series. He has kind of his own thing going on. I originally wrote him in just because the main character got this job and she needed somebody to interact with while she was there. And then the drama heated up with her, and then it became she needed somebody to vent to, who became this character also. And then he took on a life of his own, and I developed this other life for him, essentially, hinting like he has all this other stuff that has gone on, and there's other stuff that he's going through and going to go through. And I thought, wow, that would make a really good book. And then that book very quickly became a steamy one that became Curse of Wings and Darkness. And Angel, of course, because he's a vampire, has all these different alter egos that the main character in Curse of Wings and Darkness sees right through because of her abilities. And that is how we kind of uncover who this character actually is. And it becomes his own story. So I do this a lot. Do I have any current characters that I plan to develop stories for? The truth is that I'm always asking myself this as I'm writing stories. I go, would this make a good story for this character? Does this character need a spinoff? And at this moment, no, I do not have any plans for spinoffs for side characters, but let's get into question number 4. Somebody asked me if my books are all connected. And so I kind of turned this into its own question, which is, do you plan to continue with this guardian vampire universe? And I think where this is coming from is because ever since I mentioned that Curse of Wings and Darkness and Angel Ramirez comes from Guardians of the Sixth Gate, and then as people read Curse of Wings and Darkness, they found out, oh, there's Guardians in this series too, which is something I developed in Guardians of the Sixth Gate. Guardians, they're immortal. They develop their own little cliques, kind of like a witch's coven. Guardians have their own circle, and they guard these entrances, which are called gates, to the Shadowlands, which is basically inspired by Greek mythology and the underworld. It is this kind of afterlife for supernatural beings. And they guard it because when these entrances, they're open, they're entrances, also means that bad things can come back out into our world, like demons, vampires, all these other beings. And that is what the Guardian's job is, to put all these bad supernatural things back into the gate and ultimately to seal the gate so nothing can come back out of it. In order to seal it, though, they have to complete their circle, which means finding all of their members, and which means matching, which means they all have to find, which is basically their soulmate. And when they do that, they can enter the gate without being stuck there forever. They can go in and out of the gate, because in order to seal the gate, they have to go into it. And so that's basically the lore of the Guardians. Guardians become a big part and continue to be a big part in the Curse of Wings series. And I did not fully intend for that to happen. I was only going to leave the small connection, that little Easter egg that Angel had been in the Guardians of the Sixth Gate series in book 2. That was going to be the only connection. And then it just kind of made the most sense and happened from there. And the Guardians are just too interesting not to have. And so it's developed from there. And so somebody asked recently, like, are you going to have a bunch of series that are just intertwined into this world? And yes, it's not, I don't know. I can't help myself. Like I said, the Guardians are too interesting. I love the lore I've created with my supernatural characters. And so expanding on it and expanding on it and expanding on it is just really fun for me. It's this great big gigantic world like Minecraft where you can just play endlessly and create forever. And I love that. And so, yes, I do actually have an idea for a spinoff into more of this world. I do. So I have my Guardians book, I have my vampire book, and I have a very loose idea for a witches book that started out as a young adult book. I actually wrote a good half of book 1 as a young adult book. And then later on, I decided this would make a really good grown-up book. And so that character has since been reimagined as an adult. And I think I'm going to write that. That may be the next project I work on after I wrap up some of the fantasy series that I'm writing right now. I am already kind of playing with it and writing things in that series that I do plan to bring to my Patreon and post there as bonus sneak peeks. So if you like to read short stories, or you're just really interested in this universe and spicy stuff and more things that are coming up, you can actually subscribe below to my Patreon for $5 and maybe very, very soon get the first glimpse of this kind of witchy spinoff I have coming to this giant Amy Prokopis supernatural universe. So there's that coming. Somebody asked what my favorite part of the writing / publishing process is. I love the character development. It's my favorite. I love every phase of the publishing process for different reasons, but getting to know my characters and really sitting and interacting with them in that stage of writing, not just writing in general, but developing those characters just really tickles an itch for me. It fulfills my love of writing stories. It fulfills my interest in psychology and counseling. It's just everything tied up in a really neat little bow for me. So that is my favorite part, is getting to do character development. Somebody asked about the spice because I keep going on about book 2 in Curse of Wings and Darkness, or book 2, which in that series, which is Curse of Blood and Sight. I keep going on and on about this book being spicier than the last. And so somebody asked, what's the spiciest thing that you've written? The spiciest, and it's hard to say because the spiciest moment in this series, I think, is going to happen in book 3. What I thought was going to be the spiciest scene in Curse of Blood and Sight actually ended up not being the spiciest scene. I wrote just a couple days ago, actually, before I finished writing this book, I wrote probably the absolute, the spiciest, and it's hard to say because the spiciest moment, it's kind of like don't kiss and tell. So I'm not going to tell you everything. Just that it goes on for pages and there is no.
It's on a fire, feeling hot, hot, hot. You body people, come all around me, feeling.
Whew, I needed a hot second to chill out. I get this question every single time I do a Q&A, and I get this just on the street when I tell people I'm a writer or when somebody says they also like writing, which is, what is your best piece of advice for writers? And my favorite piece of advice changes all the time, but ultimately always goes back to take advice with a grain of salt. You can break a lot of rules as an author. There are general grammar rules. However, even in grammar rules, you can break some rules. You can misspell some words if you want to, if you're putting them in quotation marks. You can misspell words if you're really wanting to write an accent or something. Like in children's books, they do that a lot. Like one of the characters has their mouth full of cake and talks really funny, so you write it really funny. You can break more rules than you think in writing. And even with publishing and other aspects of this career, there are a lot of ways to do things. And so my advice is always to not get too caught up in rules and what you should do and what the right way to do things are, because that changes so often, all the time. I could make a writing advice video right now, and then even in just a month or a year, or maybe it's a few years, the advice is going to be so outdated that it's not even going to work anymore. Or maybe it doesn't work for you at all. Maybe you're not somebody that can write every single day like they say you should, or who knows what it is. So my favorite writing advice is always just to kind of find what works best for you and not get too caught up in what everyone says you should be doing. What is your writing routine? My writing routine, I tend to be I'm a night owl, so I tend to write most at night. So after Finn goes to bed, my husband and I will kind of find things to do in the evening. So if we're not watching TV together or playing a game or something together, then at least a day or two a week, we are doing our own things, kind of like co-working. So we'll be doing stuff together. He'll be doing work on his computer and I will be writing. Something that's always in my writing routine is music. I start a playlist of music that fits the vibe of my book or my series, and I add to it as I get stuff and I'm working on that project. So while I don't necessarily have a super structured writing routine, days I write, aside from Sundays, which I do a live stream and we write live together, I always have music going when I'm writing. It just helps me to stay connected to emotions in the story. So yeah, I always write with music. Another question, and the last one for today, is where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm going to rephrase it in what are you doing in 5 years? Because I will definitely be writing. I will be publishing. I hope in 5 years that authoring is my full-time job, that Amy Prokopis publishing is my full-time endeavor. That is what I hope for myself. I work really hard at it every single day, all the time, 7 days a week. I am doing something, whether it's marketing, actually writing, bookkeeping, promotion online, some kind of content creation to go along with this business. I work full-time hours for this job, and it is not my full-time job right now. So I would love for that to change. And my answer really is just, I am keeping on doing the same old things. In 5 years, I will probably be writing different books in different series that I'm writing than what I'm writing right now. But I do think in 5 years, I will still be writing books in the Season of Witches series. I think in 5 years, I will be in the summer season, I think, but we will see. It's still a little bit up in the air what season I'm going to start to next. After I finish this winter season, I think I know which one. I'm going to do like a big announcement and reveal when I finalize that. So I think I know what I am. So we will see. Maybe the summer series, we'll see. I don't know, but definitely writing in 5 years and hopefully writing full time. That's everything for this video. I hope it was interesting. It's been a little while since I have done a Q&A. I am so excited about publishing my 9th book. It is crazy. I cannot believe I have 9 books out. It really does feel like, I don't even know. I remember thinking to myself when I first started publishing that like, wow, 10 books sounds like a lot. And then I blinked and now I'm publishing my 9th. And so time really does go fast, especially when you really enjoy what you're doing. And when you do it a lot, it just goes really fast. So yeah, I am so excited. Go check out all my books in the links below. Follow me online and follow me here. Give me a like, comment down below. If you had more questions, maybe I'll answer the questions in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for sticking around, watching my video to the very end. I love you guys so much. Read books, be kind. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Oh my